I'm April Rozzo, one of the registered dietitians with Florida Cancer Specialists and Research Institute. Angela Matthewson is on the call with us also today. She's my moderator. So she will be keeping track of the chat box, the Q&A box. So if you have any questions as we go along today, please feel free to put them in either of those boxes. Angie will be keeping an eye on those so that she can throw them out to me or answer them herself as we go through. So today we are making easy turkey chili. And I say easy for a couple reasons. Soup in general is easy. Some of it is more time consuming than others, depending on how long it needs to sit on the stove. We are going to take advantage of canned items today to make things a little bit more convenient for us. So if you have come to any of our webinars before, any of our teaching kitchens before, you don't see canned products on my recipe list very often because we are big proponents of less processed food, right? More whole foods, more fresh fruits and vegetables. But there is a time and a place where some canned items can be super convenient and not unhealthy for us. And we're going to utilize that today to make this turkey chili whip up in a flash. So the first thing we're going to do, I've got some garlic. I've got a whole clove of garlic, and I've got a yellow onion. We need to go ahead and get those chopped so that we can get things cooking on the stove top. So let's go ahead and chop up the garlic. I'm just getting rid of the outer wrapping and the root so that I can chop it up here. And initially, y'all have seen me chop garlic before, but initially it can be, you know, big pieces. And then you can come back and chop it up smaller. You can also, if your knife skills are not there, if you're afraid of cutting a finger off, you can throw this in the food processor and let it chop it for you. You can buy a jar of already minced garlic and keep it in the fridge. If you have been with us before, you have heard me talk about meal prep and that I buy a whole bunch of garlic, whole cloves of garlic all at once. And I throw them all in the food processor and mince it all up all at once. And then I just keep that jar in the fridge so that whenever I'm cooking, I can skip this step. I've got it already done.
So I did a HelloFresh last night that they sometimes say that I can either mince the garlic or grate it, which I have one of those little micro planes.
Nice.
But I think most of us have the box cheese shredder, and there's a really small one on that. So if you're really afraid of the knife, you can grate the garlic instead.
Yeah. And you know, some people have a garlic press where they put the clove of garlic in the press and squeeze it, and the garlic comes out kind of already minced. So all of those are options to save you some time. And before we get to the onion, I'm going to go ahead and start heating up my pot, because once the onion is chopped, we want to be able to start cooking. We want to be able to get this going. So I'm going to put just a little half tablespoon of olive oil. You can use olive oil, rapeseed oil, avocado oil. We're not cooking at a super high temperature. We're not stir frying, so it doesn't really matter about like a smoke point. So I'm just going to do a little bit of olive oil. We're just looking for enough to like get the onions cooking, to get them started and to cook the turkey. So we really don't need a lot. I've got my heat on medium high. So we're going to let that start warming up and then go back to our onion here. Now, typically chili, typically there are a lot of variations on chili. You can do a lot of different things with chili. So if you're from Texas, chili does not have beans in it. Chili is an all beef affair if you're from Texas. My uncle would be very angry that I'm putting beans in my chili. Don't tell him. If you're vegetarian, you're not going to put any meat in your chili. You're going to put beans. So you could sub an extra can of beans or 2 extra cans of beans in place of the pound of ground turkey that I'm using. So if you wanted to keep this vegetarian, you absolutely could do that. You also have the option to choose what kind of bean you want to put in your chili. So traditionally, you're going to see something like kidney beans or pinto beans in the chili. I don't care for either of those. Those are not my favorite beans. I mean, I'll eat them, but they're not my favorite. I really, really like black beans. So that's what I'm using in my chili. So you get to pick.
I actually just was talking to a patient about my preference for subbing ground turkey for ground beef, and they are trying to do an even more plant-based diet than I am. So they're using the Impossible products, like kind of all of them. They were raving about the bratwurst.
Okay.
But yeah, like, because I'm not trying to be vegetarian, I tend to prefer the ground turkey to those like substitutes.
And we've talked about those substitutes before. So they do serve a purpose. They add more plants into your diet if you are trying to incorporate more plants and cut back on meat in your diet. But there is something to keep in mind with those, and that is that they are still processed. So they still have a lot of additives, fillers, a lot of sodium. So you're getting rid of some of the cholesterol because it's not an animal protein, but you're adding a lot more sodium to the mix. So those are really great options to use in moderation on occasion. And certainly your chili would be a great place for them. It adds the texture and the flavor of the meat without actually adding meat. I really like using the turkey because it allows me to have a substitute to the red meat so that I'm cutting back on red meat in my diet. So all of those are really good options. You could also, Angie, I think you mentioned once that you still use the meat, but you use less of it and add more beans.
Yes. And the ground turkey, and I think you're using straight ground turkey versus ground turkey breast. I find that to be just a really nice crowd pleaser and still like a healthy substitute. When I have tried to use ground turkey breast, it just doesn't have enough flavor, and I get in trouble with my meat lovers in the family, the one I married mainly. And I like, one of my favorite stories to tell patients too is like regarding chili is I tried to make it without any meat one time, and he was like, where is the meat? So yeah, now I do like kind of a cross between a Texas chili and a vegetarian chili, I guess. It's kind of like you can't really buy a half pound of ground beef for whatever reason, right? So I just kind of make like a big batch of chili with ground turkey, and I'll throw in a sliced up or chunked up pepper sometimes to mine to be a little more.
Absolutely. And that's, you can absolutely double this recipe because I make a big pot of soup all at once, and then I freeze it in individual serving sizes. So you could absolutely double this recipe, but just use the 1 pound of ground turkey.
Double the beans, leave the turkey the same. Yep.
Yep. That's absolutely doable. And speaking of the peppers, because you'll notice that there are no actual peppers in the recipe. Part of that is that I'm just not a huge fan of bell peppers, the taste of it, but I get the diced tomatoes that already have green chilies in them. So the green chilies in the diced tomatoes are helping flavor. It's giving it a little bit of a kick that the
Do
peppers
you want to put
normally
that
would
by
do.
or are you going to when you add it?
Say that again?
Are you going to show that when you add it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I found out the hard way. One of the first times that I was making chili, that I thought I would try making chili from scratch, that I am allergic to the raw jalapeno oil.
Oh, yikes.
Apparently that's a thing. I didn't know it was a thing, but apparently you can be allergic to the raw oil and not the cooked oil. And so I bought a jalapeno and chopped it up to put it in my chili. And then I must have touched my face because the oil can stay in your skin for a couple of weeks, even after you wash your hands. So I must have touched my face or something after I chopped up the jalapeno and had this huge allergic reaction. My skin got red. It felt like I was on fire. I was taking Benadryl. So that was the end of raw jalapenos for me. And instead, and this is where the convenience comes in, I get the canned diced tomatoes that have green chilies in them. And that way I don't have to mess with peppers or jalapenos or anything like that.
And I think it's Rotel that you have when you show it. That is too spicy for the fellow eaters in my house.
Okay.
So that the bell peppers are milder.
Yes.
And they're kind of easy to chop up. So it's a nice job to give my 9-year-old sous chef has a way she likes to cut those. So so we use the bell peppers. Yeah.
Yes, you could absolutely use a bell pepper. Yeah.
And it's also, it's fun with cooking with kids to have instead of the green ones, like the red or the
orange
yellow.
Or the yellow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, you absolutely could do that. So right now I'm cooking the onions, I'm browning the turkey, I'm going to add the garlic in. I tend to add the garlic in after the turkey's already in there. Like I kind of save the garlic till the end because garlic can burn really quickly. So if I put it in early with the onion, it just tends to burn. So I put it in after, because it'll have time to cook and soften and mellow once it's in the pot with everything else. So once your turkey is nice and brown, looks cooked, there's no more pink in there. We've got the onions, we've got the garlic, we've got the turkey, and now we're going to add everything else. So we're going to add the drained and rinsed black beans, and I'll come back to that in a second, but I've got a can of black beans that I already drained all the liquid out and rinsed it really well. I'm going to add I've got 2 cans of the Rotel diced tomatoes with green chili because the recipe calls for a 14.5-ounce can, and my little baby cans are 10 ounces. So I'm rounding up. I'm going to have some extra tomatoes in mine. Don't strain these. We want the tomato juice, all the juicy goodness in there. Add that in. We are going to add a little bit of water, a cup of hot water. You could add broth. All we're doing, just like when you make soup and you add broth to your soup, this is the volume, right? We're adding the base. So you could absolutely use broth instead of the water. Because I'm using water, and also to help, because I really like thick, chunky chili, I'm adding a tablespoon of tomato paste. So the tomato paste adds more of that concentrated tomato flavor, but the paste also helps thicken your soup. So I added that in. And now I'm adding a couple tablespoons of chili powder. And again, you can adjust this for your preferences, your family's preferences. You can do less, start with a tablespoon, work your way up if you need to.
And when you say chili powder, that is like straight like pepper versus like the packets that you get, like the McCormick chili seasoning, correct?
Correct. This is, and it's not cayenne pepper. Chili powder is different than cayenne pepper. But yes, this is just the chili powder. It's not a seasoning mix because I'm adding my own. So I did 2 tablespoons of the chili powder, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. And cumin is what gives a lot of vegetarian dishes kind of a meaty flavor. So don't skip the cumin. It's not the chili powder is what gives it a little bit of spice or kick. The cumin just gives it a more earthy, deep, meaty flavor. So don't skip that. And then I also put in a half of a teaspoon of oregano. Again, just to add some flavor to it. So we are going to let all of that simmer. I have some rogue onion here. Found its way out of the pot. So we're just going to let that simmer. Yes.
Sometimes I can't find my straight oregano in my cabinet. Like it's there somewhere, and I will substitute just the Italian seasoning, which I know isn't quite right, but
it just adds more flavor. It just makes your chili taste a little Italian.
So you know, I think I do have a lot of individual spices, but I know
not everybody does.
Yeah. So if you happen to just have the blend, you don't have to buy oregano. You can don't skip it, because the Italian seasoning would add some flavor too.
Definitely don't skip it. Yes, absolutely use your Italian seasoning instead. So we're
and I don't think that's something
simmer.
we know. Like, we don't think about Italian or oregano being in chili, but it really it is.
It adds a lot.
It's like, it does.
It does. So while that simmers, let's talk about these canned goods, right? Because a lot of people are really like, canned food is bad, we shouldn't. And for the most part, I agree. I'm not a fan of canned food, but where it comes really in handy is when you're doing anything with beans. So if you have dried beans, dried kidney beans, pinto beans, black beans, white beans, you have to soak those overnight, and then they cook for like 1 to 3 hours on the stovetop. I don't have time for that most of the time. That takes a lot of advanced prep and planning to soak those beans, to give yourself the time to cook them that long. So the benefit of canned beans is that they're already softened. They don't require the pre-soak. They don't require the cooking time. If I wanted to, I didn't have to cook these at all. Like, I could open this can, drain it, and throw those beans on a salad if I wanted to, and just eat them. So this saves me a ton of time. Same with the canned vegetables. Certain vegetables I won't buy canned. I won't buy canned asparagus. I won't buy canned green beans. They're mushy and I don't like them. But canned tomatoes, these canned diced tomatoes, save me a ton of time chopping fresh tomatoes. And as we talked about the pepper, it's already got it in there. It's already got the green chilies. So I can throw that in, and it saves me an extra step of chopping up peppers or whatever. Now, here's the caveat with canned food. They have a ton of sodium in them typically, right? That's usually why we avoid canned items, is because of all the sodium, the preservatives that are in those canned items. So if you can, when you are shopping, if you're buying canned items, you want to look for low sodium or no added salt, no added sodium. So that means the only thing in the can is any natural sodium that was in the food to start with. That's what that no added salt means. They didn't add anything into the can. My black beans are low sodium. So when I was at Publix, I couldn't find the no added salt, so I got the low sodium. And then I dumped them in a strainer, drained all the excess liquid out, and rinsed them under cold water. That process, that draining and rinsing, actually gets rid of a significant amount of the added sodium that's in the can. So I did that with my black beans. I bought the canned tomatoes in like a jumbo pack at Costco, so I didn't really have a choice for low sodium. So these are just regular. There's a lot of sodium. One can is actually 2 servings. So this says a serving size is a half cup, and there are 2.5 servings per container. How's that, food manufacturers? So in one serving, which is not the whole can, there's 380 milligrams of sodium. So for the whole can, that's a lot of salt.
And then you put 2 cans
And I
into
put 2
the soup.
cans into the soup.
And the
So
soup will
that-
probably be like what, like 6 servings?
6 or 8 servings.
Yeah.
6 to 8 servings. So what that means for me is that I'm not going to add any salt to my soup. Normally when you cook, if everything is fresh, you're going to add some salt and pepper, right, to taste.
Well, yeah, like at the onion step, if I'm making like a chicken or a vegetable, I'll season with some salt and pepper.
Exactly. So what that means for me, because my canned tomatoes already have so much salt in them, I'm going to skip that step. I'm not going to add any salt because there's plenty in the soup. So, and again, when you can, buy the low sodium or the no added salt, and then it's just a really good alternative. It's to make things more convenient for you. Okay, so this has been simmering. I can smell the chili powder and the cumin. You really only have to let it simmer for about 5 minutes, because by the time you add all the extra ingredients, everything is cooked. The onion and garlic and turkey are all cooked. Your beans were canned, your tomatoes were canned, so they were essentially already cooked. So we don't need to leave it on the stove for 30 or 40 minutes to let all of those ingredients cook down. That's what makes this so quick and easy. So you really only have to let it simmer to get those flavors to meld together, and then you can serve it. It's 12, it's not even 12:25, and we're done. What I will say, it's delicious now. I'm going to have it for lunch, but it tastes even better the next day. Like, put it in the fridge, let all of those flavors meld together, right? And then when you heat it up tomorrow, it's going to be even better. So if you're not used to cooking with chili powder, start small. Maybe don't put 2 tablespoons in. Start with 1 tablespoon. Don't add any more until the next day, right?
And yeah, because it will intensify.
It'll intensify overnight in the fridge. So before you start adjusting seasonings, give it some time and see what you think of it the next day. If you can take a little more heat, add it in, or adjust your recipe for next time you make it, that you can put a little bit more in. But if you're just starting out, pace yourself, right, with the chili powder.
And when I do like my versions of chili, the canned tomato product that I like sometimes is the fire roasted. Have you seen those?
Yes.
There are, canned fire roasted tomatoes, which gives you a lot of flavor without heat. So if there's people out there kind of not sure about the heat factor, that would be a way to get flavor. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I've got my bowl of soup. Okay. It's about a cup and a half of soup, serving size. So like 12 ounces-ish. And actually, when I freeze these later, when I freeze the rest, I put them in jumbo muffin tin.
Nice.
So this jumbo muffin tin is like the perfect 1 serving size for me. And so I just portion the soup into the muffin tin, throw it in the freezer. And once the soup is completely frozen, you can invert that pan and run it under hot water, and the frozen soup will just slide right out of my nonstick pan. And then I put them in freezer bags and just toss it in the freezer so I can have soup whenever I want. So that's what I'll do with the rest. When you're serving, you can top it with a little bit of like fat-free sour cream, or what I have is non-fat Greek yogurt, because it tastes exactly like sour cream.
That's so smart. Yeah, I need to get back to doing that. I've gotten on a sour cream kick. But yeah, the non-fat Greek yogurt, plain, it tastes so much like sour cream. Yeah.
And it's going to give you a little calcium. It's not going to give you all the calories. So it's just a little bit better for you. And it'll help mellow out the soup a little bit, the chili. It'll give it a little creamy taste. It'll mellow out the spices. You could also top it with a little sprinkling of cheddar cheese if you want, like shredded cheddar cheese if you wanted to, or some chopped up green onions. I'm going to keep mine just with the Greek yogurt for
That's
today.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a couple comments coming in, and but I'm going to stick for 1 second with your sub for sour cream there for a second, because I always admit where I don't practice what I preach, and I would absolutely put like a fistful of cheddar cheese on top of this. And I was thinking to myself, well, you are negating all the health benefit. But then I would do that if it were beef chili.
So a little bit goes, right, exactly. A little bit goes a long way. I normally would put some shredded cheddar cheese in mine. I don't have any convenient in the fridge. I haven't shredded any, so I'm going to skip it today just to make my life easier. But normally I would put some shredded cheddar cheese in here, but you don't need a fistful, right?
You
only
don't.
need
No, and I am going to try this yogurt, because really the cheese melts and just mellows it and gives it creaminess that I want. And I do think that the yogurt
will do
actually,
that.
and maybe even a full fat, like
you could do a full fat, because
that would still be lower. Yeah, that would still be healthier than the amount of cheddar cheese that I use.
Exactly. And I would still put a little sprinkling of cheddar cheese, but
or what
no
about
more
avocado?
than a quarter of a cup. You could put some
chopped up avocado would be nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So the comment I have coming in is a nice sub from Joyce Howe, and she's mentioning the Colavito crushed tomatoes with super low sodium, which I have got. And I use a lot of the crushed tomatoes because my family really likes it like thick, and not with, they don't like the bits of tomato, the evil squishy tomato. Yes. Yeah. So those crushed tomatoes are great. And then Natalie just says how delicious it looks. I'm looking forward to trying it.
Fantastic. Yes. And again, you can put whatever beans you like. You could do less turkey and more beans. But this is a really healthy alternative and getting rid of some of that red meat in your diet. It's okay to have some red meat once in a while, but really we're trying to make the effort to cut down the amount of red meat in your diet.
And these kinds of things, the turkey, especially the whole turkey versus the turkey breast, really carries the flavor nicely, and you don't notice as much, like versus like eating a turkey burger. That might be a hard sell for some people, but in tomato, like if you do pasta sauce, what's the other one? Like just my mom, everything is ground beef. My kids were just listing off to my friend who was over for dinner last night all the things my mom puts ground beef in. And I was like, why don't we put ground turkey in every single one of those and save the beef for when you, like, if you're a beef lover, like have the steak a few times.
Actual steak or the hamburger. Turkey, because turkey has less fat, it has a little bit less flavor. So when the ground turkey has to stand on its own, like in a turkey burger, if you don't add enough flavor and moisture to it, it really is noticeable. You get a really dry, flavorless product, turkey burger.
Yeah.
So you really have to doctor it up. When I make turkey burgers, I put a little bit of soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce in there to help with the flavor and the moisture. I make Greek turkey burgers, so then
You did, right? We made Greek turkey burgers. Yeah, those were very tasty.
Because then there's some spinach, there's some feta cheese in addition. So it's helping to add all that flavor to the turkey. But in soups and in casseroles, the turkey's just going to take on the flavor of the other stuff that's in there. You don't need ground beef. You can easily use the turkey and not miss anything. So yeah.
So comment from Jane about the turkey Italian sausage, and I'm not sure if she means like and you've probably seen that
ground Italian sausage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could do that as well. Bear in mind that we treat sausage like red meat. So processed meats like bacon and sausage, we try to really eat those bare minimum, right? We really want to cut down on those products in our diet. So now and then it would be delicious. It would add a little kick to your chili, right? That ground Italian sausage.
Although the sausage flavors, like there's like fennel And like that's, you could maybe add it as seasoning. And when you said that it would be treated like red meat, Jane typed bummer. And I agree, it's a bummer.
It's a huge bummer. I'm Italian. I know, Jane. I know. But yes, that's again on occasion, absolutely perfectly fine.
And it's like, I still think that turkey's a good step, right? Like
Mhm.
versus the pork. And that's also, my kids are interested in like our carbon footprint. So we do turkey a lot
Yeah.
versus the beef and pork just for that reason, as well as
Mhm.
health. And they, turkeys are uglier than pigs and cows, so the kids
They don't mind
feel
as
better
much.
eating them, right? But so we'll do turkey kielbasa, but I serve
Yeah.
that with like sautéed cabbage, which
Mhm.
what 9 and 12-year-olds are out there eating sautéed
Eating that.
cabbage? So
Right.
I feel like it kind of balances out too.
And this is a way to get some vegetables, right? To get our
Yeah.
tomatoes. You could put, so I make a version of this that's more like a stew, right? Like just turkey, like it would be beef stew, except I would use the turkey instead.
Yeah.
So then it's less chili and more vegetables. Then I'm
Mhm.
adding some corn and some fresh chopped up green beans, and so I'm some carrots. So you could add extra vegetables to this and keep
Yeah.
all the seasoning so that it still feels like chili, but has
I
more
was thinking
veggies in it.
zucchini. Zucchini might kind of
Mhm.
disappear. Yeah.
Absolute mushrooms, zucchini, you could put all that. Yeah, and it would just take on the flavor of the chili seasoning. So